What do you get when you mix brute force, rebellious spirit, and a love letter to speed, all wrapped in steel and gasoline? You get a muscle car. But which one reigns supreme? From legendary street brawlers of the 60s and 70s to modern-day monsters with more horsepower than common sense. Today, we're counting down the top 10 muscle cars of all time. Strap in, because this ride isn't about subtlety. It's about domination. The Beast Unleashed 1970 Chevelle S454 LS6. Now then, imagine you're in America. It's 1970. The Beatles are still singing, Nixon is trying not to sweat on TV, and someone at Chevrolet decides the world needs more power. Not just some power. Not sensible, European, oh, look how efficient we are power. No. What they build is this. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6. A car so angry, so unreasonably powerful, it made other muscle cars consider therapy. Let me put this into context. Under the bonnet lives a 454 cubic inch big block V8. That's 7.4 litres for those of us who speak in Queen's English, and it's pumping out a factory-rated 450 horsepower and over 500 lb-f of torque. That's more than a modern Porsche 911 Turbo. Except this wasn't delicate. This wasn't refined. This was torque that came at you like a thrown anvil. It didn't whisper its intentions. It growled them, punched you in the chest, and then lit the tyres on fire for good measure. It could do 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds, back in 1970, in a car the size of a bungalow. Yes, and the best bit? It was absolutely, completely, unashamedly legal. You could waltz into a Chevrolet dealership with a mustache and a pulse, sign some papers, and drive away in what was essentially a rolling act of domestic terrorism, dressed as a two-door coupe. And then there's the optional cowl induction hood. At full throttle, it would literally open up and inhale air like a mechanical lung, gasping for more violence. It wasn't just a hood, it was an air scoop with a bad attitude. Every part of the Chevelle SS was built to intimidate. The chrome bumpers, the wide stance, the subtle yet threatening SS badging. It didn't just look fast, it looked like it wanted to eat other cars. It's just a muscle car. Big engine, not a lot of finesse. Finesse? It didn't need finesse. This thing made noise like Thor's washing machine and could leave 2 black lines so long you'd need GPS to find the end. Today, if you want one, and you really should, expect to pay 6 figures. Clean examples have sold for over 2 Ethereums. Why? Because this car was it, the peak, the heavyweight champion of the golden muscle car era. If muscle cars had a Mount Rushmore, the LS6 Chevelle would be the first to get carved, right next to a bald eagle and a jukebox. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement, a 4,000-pound middle finger to fuel, economy, subtlety, and European engineering. This was America's most brutal love letter to speed. 1969 Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi. Now then, what happens when a car becomes a celebrity? When it doesn't just appear on television, it dominates television, week after week, flying over bridges, dodging bullets, and somehow never getting a scratch. You get the 1969 Dodge Charger RT, a car so famous even people who hate cars know what it is. But here's the thing, the Charger wasn't just TV fluff. Behind all that orange paint and Hollywood drama was an actual street monster. At the heart of it was the 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, known affectionately and fearfully as the Elephant. Why? Because it was huge, heavy, and if you provoked it, it charged. Developed for NASCAR in the 1960s, the Hemi was a full-on race engine with hemispherical combustion chambers that allowed for massive airflow, efficient burn, and a power band like a rocket sled. It made 425 horsepower on paper, but most say that was a lie designed to calm insurance companies. In reality, think closer to 470. 0 to 60, just over 5 seconds, in a car weighing nearly 2 tons, and the aerodynamic profile of a brick in a cowboy hat. It was brutally fast, with a quarter-mile time in the mid-13s on bias-ply tyres and factory suspension. Add a modern tune and a proper set of tyres, and you've got a time machine that eats Camaros for breakfast. The 69 Charger didn't just go fast, it looked fast, even standing still. The Coke bottle curves, the recessed grille, the full-width taillight panel, it had presence. like it had just walked out of a Western saloon and wasn't afraid to throw the first punch. And then there's the RT, short for road track. It wasn't a badge, it was a declaration. This wasn't for your aunt's shopping runs. This was built to take a beating, do a burnout, and make it home with a smirk. Yes, the Charger got famous as the General Lee, but it earned its stripes before Hollywood ever came calling. In drag strips and street battles across America, the Unicorn 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. Now, some cars are fast, some are loud, and there are the ones that become mythical. So rare, so outrageous, and so spine-rattling that they make Bigfoot look like a house cat. Welcome to the 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. Calling this thing rare is an understatement. In 1971, only 108 hardtops and 11 convertibles were built, with the legendary 426 Hemi engine, 11. As in, you're statistically more likely to be hit by lightning twice than to park next to one of these at your local Cars and Coffee. And even when it was new, it was a punch in the face to conformity. Fender gills that looked like shark slashes, a shaker hood that actually wobbled at idle like it was laughing at lesser cars. This wasn't built to be polite. It was built to terrify. Under the hood, you guessed it, the 426 Hemi. The same race-bred, top fuel-inspired behemoth, 425 horsepower, and enough torque to rotate the Earth off its axis, all wrapped in a body that looked more like a bar fight than a design brief. 0 to 60 in the low 5-second range, a quarter-mile time around 13 seconds. On 1970s tyres, mind you, this wasn't just muscle, this was muscle with rabies. And here's the kicker. The Hemi Cuda was almost too powerful. Insurance companies hated it. They charged sky-high premiums just to cover the thing. Parents freaked out. Politicians clutched their pearls. It was like releasing a pit bull into a dog show for poodles. As a result, sales were slow, which is tragic, but also why today surviving examples can sell for over $500,000. That's right, more than a brand new Rolls-Royce for a car that rattles your bones and smells like burnt rubber and defiance. And the styling? Muscular, low, wide, with quad headlights that looked like it hadn't slept in a week and was looking for a fight. Side stripes that said, don't even think about it. This was a car that didn't whisper performance. It howled it at full volume. The 1971 Hemi Cuda isn't just rare, it's sacred, a factory-built hot rod, with the DNA of a dragster and the attitude of a rock star on a 3-day bender. It didn't just mark the end of the muscle car era, it slammed the door shut with a burnout so long, we're still smelling it today. Shelby's Monster, 1965, Ford Shelby GT350. Now imagine if someone took a well-mannered, neatly dressed schoolboy and sent him to military boot camp with a diet of gasoline and gunpowder. That essentially is what happened when Carroll Shelby got his hands on the Ford Mustang. This is the 1965 Shelby GT350, a car that was technically a Mustang, yes, but spiritually, it was something else entirely. It was a wild animal, a snarling, corner-devouring, track-slaying menace. It all starts with Carroll Shelby, former race car driver, chicken farmer, and full-time performance maniac. He looked at the Mustang, said, "Nice, now let's make it terrifying," and immediately set about stripping it, stiffening it, and stuffing it with go-faster everything. The result? A fastback Mustang with a 289 cubic inch V8 tuned to crank out 306 horsepower in a car that weighed under 2,900 pounds. That's like strapping a rocket to a go-kart and saying, "Oh, best of luck." But the magic wasn't just under the hood. Shelby upgraded the suspension, swapped in quicker steering, added Coney shocks, and fitted front disc brakes that didn't just slow the car down, they told it to behave. This wasn't built to cruise Sunset Boulevard. This was built to own Willow Springs, Sebring, and any poor fool who tried to keep up. Inside, Spartan, raw, function over flair, the back seat gone, replaced with a spare tyre and a fire in your chest. It was more race car than road car, and that was the point. And then there's the noise. My word, the noise. Side exit exhaust that barked like an attack dog with a megaphone. At full throttle, the GT350 didn't just move, it announced itself. Loudly, proudly, unapologetically American. And don't forget the Le Mans-style stripes. Twin racing lines running over the top like battle scars. Every inch of this thing shouted performance. It didn't care about comfort. It didn't care about luxury. It just wanted to go fast and take corners like it had hated them personally. This is the car that gave the Mustang its bite. Before the GT350, the Mustang was a stylish cruiser, the automotive equivalent of a varsity Letterman. After Shelby got through with it, it was a predator. The GT350 redefined what an American pony car could be. It was proof that muscle could handle, that Detroit could dance, and that Ford wasn't just building cars, they were building legends. The 1965 Shelby GT350 didn't just turn the Mustang into a performer, it turned it into a monster. A loud, twitchy, adrenaline-soaked monster with racing stripes and a mission. It was track-bred violence in a tidy little coupe, and it made sure the world never saw the Mustang the same way again. The Gentleman's Street Fighter, 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. If most muscle cars were loud, brash, beer-swilling hooligans, then the 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1 was James Bond in a bar fight. Polished, composed, but perfectly capable of smashing your face through the jukebox if provoked. On the surface, the GSX was all class, subtle grille, chrome accents, tasteful striping, if striping can ever be tasteful, but behind that civilized exterior was a 455 cubic inch V8 with 510 pound-feet of torque. At just 2800 RPM, that's more twist than a modern diesel truck. In fact, for a time, this was the torque king of the muscle car world. Yes, more than the Hemi, more than the LS6 Chevelle, and yet somehow this thing came with power windows and air conditioning. Now, here's where it gets fun. The Stage 1 wasn't just a sticker. It meant higher compression, hotter cam, bigger carbon serious internals. Buick took their big block and gave it a gym membership and a grudge. Rated at 360 horsepower, officially. But again, that's more insurance-friendly fiction. The real number? Somewhere north of 400, with a torque curve so flat you could use it as a coffee table. 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds. Quarter mile in the low 13s, all while wearing loafers and not spilling your coffee. The GSX didn't need to scream to be scary. It just nodded politely and then outran everything. It was the car for the guy who wanted to beat a Hemi at the lights, then drive his mother to church in air-conditioned comfort. It was dual-purpose muscle, a split personality wrapped in vinyl and torque. Back in 1970, it didn't get the hype it deserved. It wasn't as flashy as a GTO or as outrageous as a Superbird. But today, collectors know, enthusiasts know, the GSX Stage 1 is a silent assassin, one of the most capable, most balanced, most misunderstood muscle cars ever built. The Buick GSX Stage 1 was proof that you didn't need to shout. To be dangerous, it was power in a tailored suit, civilized fury, the kind of car that didn't look for trouble, but never backed away from it either. You could idle it through traffic like a Sunday stroll, and then absolutely obliterate anything that challenged you at a red light. The Gentleman's Street Fighter. The Homologation Hammer, 1969, Ford Mustang Boss 429. Now, most legendary muscle cars were built for the street, or the strip, or to settle bar bets. But this one? This was built because of a rule book, because some suit at NASCAR said, if you want to race it, you have to sell it. Enter the 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429, a car born not from passion, but from compliance, and thank the horsepower gods it was. Ford had a 429 cubic inch semi-hemispherical V8 ready to dominate stock car racing, but to make it legal, they had to stick it into a production Mustang. Easy, right? Not quite. The engine was so massive it didn't actually fit, so they called in Carcraft, the same mad geniuses who built GD40s, to re-engineer the front end of the Mustang just to wedge the thing in. They moved shock towers, modified suspension geometry, reinforced the chassis. Basically, they surgically altered the car to accept this monster of an engine, and in the process they built a street-legal track weapon in disguise. On paper, the Boss 429 made 375 horsepower. In reality, closer to 500. This wasn't your average fast Mustang. This was a brawny, big-bore, no-nonsense race engine with a license plate. Torque came in waves. The idle was angry. The acceleration was violent. It didn't purr, it growled like a V8 chewing gravel through a megaphone. And yet, it still looked like a Mustang. Sleek fastback lines, subtle Boss 429 badging. A massive functional hood scoop, because subtlety had its limits, and Magnum 500 wheels to complete the menace on wheels look. It was the automotive equivalent of a linebacker in a tuxedo, smooth, sharp, and ready to knock you into next week. Only 859 were built in 1969, and each one was basically hand-fitted by Car Craft, which makes them rare, extremely rare. Today, they're unicorn-tier collectibles. Clean examples fetch 6 figures, easy, sometimes 7. Funny, isn't it? A car built to tick a box on a NASCAR form ended up becoming one of the most valuable and iconic Mustangs of all time. The Boss 429 wasn't about comfort, it wasn't about mass appeal, it was about rules and breaking them as loudly as possible once they had been followed. It was compliance, weaponized, a homologation hammer with polished paint and bad intentions, and it remains one of Ford's most brutal masterpieces. This story deserves way more, so we have decided to bring it to you in the next video, to be continued.